brushes, and let's go up here and do it. I'm going to take off today and go right into some Van Dyke Brown. I'm going to use this little big brush, and I'm just going to literally tap some of the color right into the bristles. Suggest you tap. That way it gets a nice even distribution of color all the way through the brush. See there? Both sides nice and even.
I gotta have all my beverages.
Let's start out today right up here, and we'll make little X patterns, little crisscross strokes. Just this is the way the teacher used to write on the paper in school.
Hello.
Just go through and make all these big X's.
Oh.
That's the kind of grades I got.
Hi.
There we go. Now this color is blending with the liquid white, and automatically beautiful things begin happening. Continue to keep this brush moving. Don't stay in one spot and just work the
Is it
color
not plugged in? Oh, it's not plugged in. Give me a minute. What?
There we go. Just keep it going.
Not off the top of my head, but I haven't really been live recently. I'm sorry.
We'll put a little bit of warmth down here. This is going to be the horizon area right down here. So I'll go right into a little bit of dark sienna without cleaning the brush and tap a little of that right into my bristles, just a small amount. All right, watch here now. We'll go right up here.
I should do my hair. I don't know what I want to do with my hair though.
So we have a nice warm color right at the horizon, and it goes up into the Van Dyke Brown. A little more color. And it work out great. Isn't that fantastic? Now, while I have this little dirty brush, it has all the browns on it. I'm going to take and add a little touch of yellow ochre to it. So we've got the sienna and the brown. Add a little bit more of each. There. Now, let's go down here to the bottom of the canvas and just add some fluff. Just pull that across. This will end up being shadows. I think today
That was a
painting
thick fucking hair. That hurt. Like
this will end up being some shadows. Now, very gently, very gently. I'm just going to blend this entire sky together. Just blend it very lightly. This just takes out the brush strokes. But you don't want to kill all the little patterns that you have up in the sky, right? That's what ends up being the interesting part of it. Okay, tell you what, let's do. I'll clean this brush. And we clean our brushes with odorless paint thinner. And I really recommend you use odorless thinner, or you'll be working by yourself. Your spouse will run out of the house. Shake off the excess. I have a box down here. I shake the brush into that. And that's really the most fun of this whole technique. It's just raising Cain with that brush. Of course, it's also one of the best ways to redecorate your whole room if you're not careful. Try to contain that part of it. I'm going to take a big old round brush here and go right into some titanium white. We'll just pull it through there and load it up. Load it up. A lot of paint. Okay, let's go to the canvas. Maybe there's a big happy cloud that lives in this painting. He lives right there. See, just work that brush. Let this old cloud just float around the sky. And have fun. There we go. Don't stay in one place. Continually keep the brush moving. Continually keep it moving. If you stay in one place and just grind this coloring, all you're going to have is, you're going to look like big cotton balls up in the sky. Now we'll take this big brush, just very gently blend the bottom of it. Just blend the bottom of it. If you painted with us before in this series, I'm going to introduce you to some new brushes and some new equipment I think you'll really enjoy. There we go. Now beat this brush a little, and that just takes off the excess paint. And we're going to pluck these clouds. Look at there. Look at this over here. Pulls up all those beautiful little stringy things. And don't worry if you pull up big stringy things here, because when we blend this, they'll go away and they end up being a nice soft the edges of your clouds. See there? Okay. Maybe you want several layers of clouds in your paint. Can do easy. Just a little more paint. Come right in here. And put in another happy little cloud. And in your painting, you put as many clouds as you want. Just drop them in. And clouds are very pretty. They may be one of the prettiest things in nature. You just sort of float around and have fun all day. And think about that when you're painting. Think how free clouds are. major clouds act the same way. Give them that feeling of looseness, of freedom. Just let them go. There. Okay. Now then, maybe back here, let's have some little background trees that live all back in here. I've got several of each brush going, so I don't have to spend all my time washing the brush. I'm going to go right into some Van Dyke Brown. And I'm just going to tap this brush right into some brown and right into some red. Back and forth here. We just sort of mix the brush. So really,
I'm okay.
tap this in good.
Kind of. I don't really know.
Here, just go here. Now there, maybe right here. There's a happy little tree. There it goes. There it goes. Right on up. Notice here I've started at the bottom and worked upward. That way it's darker at the bottom than it is at the top. So you have the illusion of dark shadows down at the bottom. Okay? I just put in some very basic.
Don't know what that says. I'm sorry.
You're not looking for distinct shapes at this time. Later on we'll get worrying about very distinct shapes. Right now we're just blocking in. Maybe here there's one. Oh, okay. He's a little taller. A little taller. There we go. See how simple that is? But keep the dark color down here at the base. And this is really what makes it fun. Just sort of let these things go. We'll have another little tree right here. Keep it very dark at the bottom and begin forming some basic shapes. Very basic. Oh my gosh, I got to talk in there, and my little tree turned into a big tree. We may have to lay a little canvas on top because we have enough room to cover all this. We'll give him a little friend here too. And some up here maybe they're very light. Very light. Very light. Just barely can see some. Look at that. And then a super late. We'll throw in some happy little background trees. There we go. Tell you what, I set that brush down, and I'm going to get the number 2 script iron brush, and put a little paint thinner, and right into my dark color. This is just the browns. Turn the brush, you want this paint to be just like the wood. Very, very thin. Very thin. Turn it, pull it, that'll bring it to a beautiful sharp edge. Let's go to the canvas there. Now then, I'll put some indications back here. Just some tree trunks, some stems. All we do is just quickly dry them off. Since this paint is very thin and very solid, it's a thick paint. This mixed paint is very thick.
Don't know what you were saying, and I am deeply sorry for that. Sorry, Bob. I want to find something more. I don't know. Let's ASMR. That's my sister. I was watching something about the Habsburg's jaw, you know that royal family that made themselves extinct. And my mom came in my room and she started talking to the cat, and then she was like very entranced by the TV. And I'm like, it's the Habsburg's jaw. They killed themselves. I think it was the Spanish side of the Habsburgs that died first. I think there's very little, like, people that are still living in the Habsburgs because it was so severe. It was horrific. But, and my mom was just like, it's funny. Ooh. love that things like My Little Pony and Bob Ross and stuff are starting to show older episodes of the shows that they run YouTube channels for the franchises on live streaming and stuff, because one, it's good for kids to watch it, because if it's something like Bob Ross learning painting, if it's something like Friendship is Magic, they're learning how to be a good friend essentially, and how to handle like kind of complex situations. And so it is good for kids that don't have things like Netflix or Hulu, because those are the channels I know off the top of my head that have those. And I love it. I fucking love it. Because it's them spreading their stuff in a free space. Like, yes, they're making money off of it, clearly. Hell, I would say My Little Pony's YouTube channel makes fucking money. Like, they could happily put everything from the Hasbro shit on it. Type of money. But, like, just knowing that they do this, and maybe they're unaware of the fact that it's great for kids that don't have money for streaming services, or have never watched things like PBS and stuff. Hell, other kids in other countries learning English, it probably helps. I'm probably never going to have biological children, just because I don't want, to give birth, and I see no point in putting more people in the world when there's people in the world that already need help. But I do worry about the youth a lot. I do. We're watching something about Abraham Lincoln. Yesterday we watched something about one of the presidents. Who was it? I can't remember. But we're watching educational shit. Y'all deserve a fucking education. Jesus Christ. And I know me, not great education, but like listening to education is good education. Hell, if people wanted me to start talking about education more, I would have fucking heartbeat. I've always had like the back of my head dream of being a teacher. Like a good high quality teacher. Like real, like truly. And just on the sense of the world and the education system at the moment, I can't do that. You're telling me I have to go teach these little faces the world in math and history and sciences and stuff, but I can't talk about things that are in the world because it might make somebody's religious ass mom bitchy. Your child is not an extension of you. Your child is its own living, breathing thing. I'm sorry that you apparently don't know this. So many people have kids and regret it, or they have kids because they wanted a baby and they regret it. Truly, you want a child. If you are like, I want a baby, I want a kid, I want someone, think, would I be okay adopting a kid? And if the answer is no, you probably shouldn't be a parent. If you cannot love a child that is not related to you unconditionally, with the whole of your heart, and adore that baby with your whole heart, you should not be a parent. Those are the type of parents that look at their kids and be like, I don't know who you are, because they grew up. Because they're not 4 anymore. It's upsetting. Like, there's probably a reason why you don't know anything about your kids, and it's probably because you are a bad person and mean. I need to put some sunscreen on me next morning. Yeah. Really? That was his reason for hating slavery? I'm sorry, I'm listening to the TV. Apparently Abe Lincoln's dad was abusive, and like forced into like do manual labor or some shit. And that was his reasoning for not liking slavery. Not because they are also humans. No, because his experience. Okay. I gave you. I gave you. Hold on, Abe. Come on.
They developed a great bond for each other, and Sarah later admitted that she preferred Abraham to her own children.
He was the best
You know,
boy
maybe
I
the
ever
dude
seen.
was like kidnapped on
He even had and never dodged responsibility. Sarah wished John stood in.
She encouraged Abraham in his passion for learning. He'd already taught himself how to write by about the age of 7, using a turkey feather
That
pen
is sweet.
and blackberry ink.
Ooh,
Lincoln barely saw the inside
sounds
of his
delicious.
school because his father kept him busy on the farm.
Sorry, I don't know what you're saying.
In total, the man who would later write his country's greatest speeches had less than 1 year's formal education, but he worked furiously to educate himself.
Excuse me.
When he heard somebody had a book he was interested in, he walked miles to go get it, sit down and read it. He's absorbing information, he's trying to determine what he thinks about it, and how to engage that idea or this thought, or how to use it to me. I remember how I get irritated when anybody talked in a way I did not understand. I could
Oh my god, he
something
looked like
that.
Abraham Lincoln in the chat.
Yes, I had fun.
Excuse me.
Lincoln's passion
Ow.
for study was fueled by his disdain for his father, who could barely sign so many.
Oh, that's
Lincoln's
depressing.
father served as something of a negative model for him. He regarded his father as lacking ambition, as lazy, as anti-intellectual, things that Lincoln wanted to escape from. He saw in his father.
Hello.
By law, Lincoln had to work for his father until he was 21.
That was a law?
Obligations was to split rails to fence in his father's new farm in Illinois near the
Oh, that's how he made.
Then Abraham left home for
That's how they. Oh,
to
that's
become, as he said,
neat.
a
That's
peaceful
neat.
worker.
Oh, I should make a log cabin in my world. In my Floyd's Land world.
In 1831, he landed in an Illinois commercial village, New Salem, his first taste of urban life. Although it had
That was
only
urban?
100 people, it had the intellectual stimulus of a law
Oh,
enforcement
that's
agency.
cute. I'm watching TV in the mirror.
Lincoln
I'm
worked
watching
as a
TV.
cook in a general store, and soon became enormously popular. For both
They're so
his
cute. The
honesty
little log
and his
buildings are so
collection of
cute.
funny stories.
Hi. I'm so sorry to anyone that's like, why isn't she responding to my thing? I don't speak other languages. I know it's really bad. I'll fix it at some point. That is something that I should fix as a person who loves everyone. Like I should really fix it. I just listen. I knew Spanish as a child to a degree, and then I lost all of it. And then they tried to teach me when I was much older, and I don't know why it didn't click. But it was insanity. I can't even explain it. And I got zipped from it, which is nuts. They probably lied so hard to get me exempt from that. But like, if you know anything about the state, it was in the fucking thing that you had to learn a second language to graduate high school. And I got zipped. They 1000% lied some crazy fucking shit behind my back. But like, maybe I'll learn. What language should I learn? I could probably learn Spanish relatively easy if I like try really hard. But I don't know how I would retain it. That's the problem. I don't speak it fluently. So I don't know how I would retain it. But it would be nice. What are other languages y'all speak? Because I know I have an audience in Mexico, so I know Spanish is one. What else?
taste being elected. He didn't run. They just chose
I
him.
don't know.
And I thought,
I
this
don't
is
know.
fine. Get elected, please. When the First War ended after a few months, Lincoln the civilian would try to get elected.
Lincoln the civilian. That's
At the age
hilarious.
of just
He was
23,
the
he
civilian.
going to run for the state legislature. Politics had called.
He went into politics immediately. He was like, I'm being a part of this.
When the 23-year-old grocery clerk
He was
sat
23?
for the state assembly,
I keep
said
yelling
a
at
lot
the TV.
about his ambition and self-confidence. Only a year before Lincoln
You know how
began
nice it's gonna be when I don't live here?
friendless,
I'm just
uneducated,
yelling in my
and
apartment and everyone's like, what the fuck, Avery? Oh. And it's gonna be like, we were watching the History Channel. Who's we? Me and my fans. What fans? What are there fans in your house?
Lincoln's first attempt failed, but he stood again 2 years
I'm
later
stupid.
and was elected to the state assembly.
I'm not stupid. Don't call yourself stupid.
His qualifications.
Don't use negative language towards yourself. It's bad. Don't. Fucking, I've been saying that for years, and I've been calling the cat a big fat baby because she's a big fat baby as like endearment. And now my mom's all like, let's not use negative language in the house.
People trusted him as they would trust the benevolent father.
I've been trying to make you shut the fuck up
Because being a state legislator
about like
was a
negative
part-time job
language,
with part-time
like just not
pay,
say it
he
for
worked
like
other jobs,
years.
including
But I call the cat
postmaster,
a big fat baby because she looks like a big fat baby.
which went bankrupt. Despite all this, he found time to teach himself to walk.
And I'm in trouble. What the fuck?
He won his lawyer's license.
She looks chunky as hell. She's not that chunky, but
Policy issues
she knows it's in here. The cat knows. We advance from this.
stand on what national issues.
Like, you need to know the cat.
Slavery had existed in America for 200 years.
Yeah, and it was bad.
Mainly confined to the rural South. Abolitionist groups in the North were campaigning for an end to slavery.
As they should.
They had little support in the North. but
That's
this is
depressing.
Still pervasive. In Illinois, the legislature condemned
Illinois?
abolitionists as troublemakers.
Wait, where is it? I don't know. I don't know the states, okay? Leave me alone. I need my mom to freeze in here. To get ahead in the world, to achieve something greater than he had known in his own childhood. Although opposing slavery, Lincoln was forced to admit that the Constitution allowed it. Like many Northerners, he saw no legal way to eliminate slavery. He thought it was wrong, gotta get rid of it. Why? Because financially would safeguard slavery was limited. Trying to accelerate the process. Good. And I suppose parts of it were right. Why? Triple bolt. In 1837, Lincoln left New Salem for the state capital of Springfield to practice law.
she set out to woo Lincoln.
Hi everyone.
Anybody watching
I had my mommy braid my hair, and now I'm gonna go do something.
that this was a fellow who's going to make a name for himself in some way anywhere.
There's a wonderful story of visiting, unable to speak a word with his jaw simply hanging inside while Mary chattered away about everything. She was a wonderful mimic. She was a great gossip. She talked about politics. She could quote Shakespeare, the Bible, and the topics of the world.
They were soon engaged, but then Lincoln began to get cold feet about marriage, saying he feared it might be something indescribably horrible. His nerves snapped. He called off the engagement, and he fell into a deep depression. His friends removed razors from his room for fear he would kill himself. It was not until his friend Joshua Speed married and reported himself happy that Lincoln reconsidered betrothal. After 18 months apart, friends brought Lincoln and Mary Todd back together. One recent story was hardly that she would be the in the bed. And on the next day, he was so guilty that having sex outside of marriage, that he said, "We gotta get married right away." And there's no hard evidence for that. But it is striking that they did get married on one of these notes. She was living with her sister, who was a member of the Notes Consultants until their assignments. And she gave her other sisters big wedding, elaborate parties, not married. They were just married on Monday's notes. Her sister Elizabeth complained that even a free Negro would give her family time to bake a ginger cake. And Lincoln's best man said that Rome looked like it was going to the slaughter. Lincoln was 33 when he became a husband in November 1842, and he became a father a little less than 9 months later when Robert Lincoln was born. It was the start of the Lincoln family life that would be marked by tragedy. Lincoln, along with other lawyers and judges, covered a 500-mile circuit twice a year on horseback. Lincoln became known for hard work and honesty. The other lawyers called him Honest Abe.
If you cannot be an honest lawyer, choose some other occupation. The worst man cannot be found than one who stirs up strife, put money in his pocket. Abraham Lincoln.
He cultivated an image of honesty, and I think it was an image based on genuine substance. I think Lincoln believed that the best way to win a legal case, or the best way to get ahead in politics, was to level with the jury or the voters. In court, Lincoln deliberately pitched his argument so that the common people would understand him. Lincoln was extremely gifted at convincing juries. He had a very likable quality, and he would win juries over by the length of his personality and his self-deprecating humor and the quality of his mind. A very powerful argument. His law office in Springfield was spared plenty like Lincoln himself. He kept important papers in his stovepipe cabinet, and his partner, Billy Herndon, complained about Lincoln's casualness.
He could spread himself out over easily a quarter of the room and read aloud, almost beyond my point to the jurors. His explanation was, first I see what I read, then I hear it. 2 senses catch the idea, and I can remember it better.
As his law practice grew, Lincoln was able to buy a house in 1844 for $1,500. But what sort of a marriage did the Lincolns have inside that house? It's a topic that still divides historians today.
The marriage was illegal and painful,
And William Herndon's law partner said it was a
I'm back.
I don't think that's true.
I had to pick a black kid out on the
She
and she had a blanket like on her shoulder. I noticed it yesterday when she got out of the bath. And I was like, I want to get that because I saw it and it was kind of deep. And she was like, no. So I just kept picking at it until she let me get it. And it was straight up like dead skin and sweat and nasty. And then she was like she realized in her head, yeah, I should have let Adrian get this one again.
When she got angry, she yelled and screamed at the temper tantrum, and he turned on his heel and left her alone. He never wanted to argue. But above and beyond those things and those difficulties, they were truly in love. They had a physical relationship that was, by all indications, excellent.
But Mary was often neurotic, especially when Lincoln was away. She was terrified of dogs and thunderstorms and suffered from migraines and exhaustion. And even when her husband was at home, he was often moody and distant. I think Lincoln tended to be very short of public life and didn't give her the emotional support, emotional attachment that she needed. On a consistent basis, would simply lock her out of life. Lincoln could also be emotionally cool towards his firstborn, Robert, in the same way that Lincoln's own father had been distant towards him.
Their first son, I think, didn't see very much of his father with Robert because Lincoln was beginning to build his career, and that meant going to about every courtroom that he could find and taking as many cases as he possibly could and riding the circuit.
The Lincolns had a second son, Edward, in 1846, an important year for Abraham. He entered politics at the national level, winning Whig Party nomination for a safe congressional seat. The ambitious man from Illinois was on his way to Washington.
Well, when he goes to Washington in his late 30s, he gets a taste of national office and being in Washington. He likes it. He finds that very gratifying. And his wife finds it. She finds it very gratifying. So it stimulates his ambition.
It was in Washington that Lincoln had his first in-depth encounter with slavery. He could not walk from his boarding house to the Capitol without seeing the slave auction houses, Negro livery stables, he called them.
Think of having a slave auction across from the Capitol. That's what occurred. People look out, our foreign visitors look out, and they see men and women being sold like cattle. For Lincoln, I think it was especially intense because I think Lincoln believed firmly in the principles of this country and equality and liberty.
Lincoln proposed a referendum to end slavery in the Capitol, but dropped the idea when it won almost no support. And after serving just one term in Congress, Lincoln found himself back in Springfield. It had been agreed in advance that the Whig Party would rotate his seat. Being out of politics put Lincoln into frequent depressions. His partner, William Herndon, called him this unfortunate and miserable man. There were personal conflicts, too. Throughout his life, Lincoln was famous for not holding a grudge. But there was one great exception, and that was his father. In 1849, Thomas Lincoln lay dying and asked to see his son one last time. But Abraham had not forgotten nor forgiven his childhood meetings.
Lincoln sent a message back saying, "Tell our father that it would be more painful than pleasant if we were to see each other now." And he refused to go. And then he refused to attend his funeral. Lincoln and his father were utterly different kinds of people. Lincoln's father didn't have the kind of ambition that his son had. He didn't have the kind of humor. He didn't have the idealistic values.
But within a few months, there'd be another funeral that Lincoln could not avoid. His second son, Edward, succumbed to tuberculosis just short of his 4th birthday. Both parents were devastated, and as if to compensate, Mary became pregnant again almost immediately. Their third son, Willie, was born in 1850, and their fourth, Tad, 3 years later. Lincoln, who'd been somewhat distant as a father, now became the indulgent parent.
I think when Eddie died, that made Lincoln more sensitive to the next kid who came along. And he was profoundly devoted to the children. If you were a younger kid, then you got a lot of attention, a lot of affection from the father, an overindulgence of these children.
Lincoln's law partner complained that the young boys would put the office books into a pile and dance on them, while the father said nothing.
If they had soiled Lincoln's hat and rubbed it on his boots, he would have laughed and thought it smart. William Herndon.
Lincoln, perhaps remembering his own hard childhood, wrote down his thoughts on parenting.
It is my pleasure that my children are free and happy, unrestrained by parental tyranny. Love is the chain to bind a child to his parents.
Although out of office, Lincoln was keeping a close watch on the political scene, looking to re-enter the fray. That chance would come in 1854, and again, the issue would be slavery. By 1854, slavery was already a hot political topic in America. And then Congress poured gasoline on the fire. At the urging of the South, it voted that the huge federal territories of Kansas and Nebraska, which had been designated as free, would now be open to slavery. Lincoln, like many Northerners, was outraged.
Northerners looked upon slavery as a spreading cancer because slavery meant the Constitution allows Southerners to count their slaves as 3/5 of a person for the purpose of having representatives in Congress. The fear of many Northerners was that the South was going to use this slave power to dominate the federal government at the Northerners' expense.
Lincoln publicly argued against slavery's expansion on moral grounds.
We called the maxim, all men are created equal, a self-evident truth. Now we are so greedy to be masters, we call it a self-evident lie. Abraham Lincoln, 1854.
Lincoln believed slavery made true democracy impossible. But he also had political motives for opposing it. He knew many Northern voters feared slavery's expansion simply because they didn't want Negroes coming north.
The race prejudice in the North was pervasive, especially out in Illinois, as Lincoln well knew. And Lincoln, one of the first things he said on the issue was that he wanted a policy that would keep territories free for white people.
And although he opposed slavery, Lincoln said publicly that it was impossible to make slaves the political or social equal of whites.
He didn't believe African Americans should be allowed to vote, hold office, sit on juries, intermarry with whites. It's hard to imagine a more thoroughgoing statement of white supremacy than Lincoln made.
Lincoln supported the idea of colonization, of paying owners to free their slaves, and then shipping them voluntarily to their long-lost fatherland of Africa.
Lincoln was a politician. And much like
I don't know
politicians
how to
today,
figure out.
he was not above saying things that he thought would help get him elected. He says he's opposed to slavery. Then he also says in the same breath, but I think at the same time that free blacks should be colonized outside of the United States. That plays very, very well with the masses.
Northerners, wanting to stop the expansion of slavery, formed a new political party, the Republicans, with Lincoln as a leading light. In 1858, he was named Republican Senate candidate, challenging the Illinois Democrat Stephen Douglas, who argued that any state or territory that wanted slavery should be allowed to have it, One of the greatest duels in American political history was about to begin. A struggle over the nation's moral and political direction.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. It will become all one thing or all the other. Abraham Lincoln, 1858.
As Lincoln began his campaign with those words, the slavery issue had already become violent. Clashes between pro- and anti-slavery settlers in the new territories had led to the term
Thank you.
bleeding Kansas. Now the entire country would be listening as Lincoln and Douglas began a series of 7 debates across Illinois. As a public speaker, Douglas had all the advantages.
Man of enormous energy, with a deep baritone voice which had carrying power. He spoke rapidly. He spoke with great energy. He spoke with vigor and force in a kind of traditional oratorical style.
Lincoln, by contrast, had a high, piercing voice and lacked Douglas's on-stage presence.
He had this funny habit of bending his knees down and then throwing himself and his arms straight up in the air when he wanted to emphasize a point. So it was a very strange, awkward kind of presentation, but the logic of the idea seemed to make a lot of sense to people. And he had a fine rapport with the crowd.
The debates
crowd's
went
like,
to
"We
a
like
very
this
hard
silly
place in
man."
America.
Him and his
Black
weird
Americans
squats.
entitled to rights under the Declaration of Independence. Douglas, a slave owner, said they
Yeah.
were not.
This government was made for the benefit of white men. The signers of the Declaration of Independence did not mean Negro, nor savage Indians, nor any other barbarous race. Stephen Douglas, 1858.
You look inbred.
Stephen Douglas is saying that democracy is
I'm yelling at the
with
TV.
slavery. Lincoln has to undo that idea, or he won't be able successfully to
Not
challenge
me.
slavery or to protect
I'm watching
democracy.
something about Lincoln and they've been talking about slavery for the last like 20 minutes.
One class
And
looks
this
upon
motherfucker
slavery
keeps
as
being
wrong,
like,
and
my
another
tip
class
is,
does not.
and it's
It
making
is
me
a eternal
mad.
struggle between right and wrong, between the common
It's
right
making me
of
fucking
humanity
mad.
and the divine right of kings. Abraham Lincoln, final debate.
Despite
That's
the
a pretty
intense interest
building.
in the debates, Illinois voters
That's
never
fun.
got to choose directly between the two men.
What building is
Instead,
this?
they were voting for a state assembly,
Oh, it's some sort of
which in
building.
turn would elect a senator.
Pretty building.
When the Democrats won a state majority, Douglas kept his Senate seat, and Lincoln
Girl,
went
okay.
back to his legal office. Lincoln was crestfallen but philosophical.
Well, that's philosophical.
Though
It's
I
also
now seek
unhealthy
out of you
people.
and shall be forgotten, I believe I have made some marks which will tell for civil liberty long after I am gone. Abraham Lincoln, 1858.
It's so fancy. Yeah.
But Lincoln was not about to seek out a view.
Hello, Lincoln.
He was
Lincoln
now a
had
national
very
figure
hollow
and was being
cheekbones.
mentioned as a candidate for the next great election.
He had
to
very
choose a
strong
president
bone
in
structure. Dude
1860.
could have had more than honestly. Have you ever thought about that? He's cheekbones, dude. Oh my god.
Lincoln's first reaction to the presidential talk was laughter. He grabbed his knees and chuckled, just
Oh,
think of such
yeah.
a sucker as me as president.
You were a
But in the
sucker.
coming months, his mood
He
would
had
change.
strong. He had very strong cheekbones and like a very strong
The
nose.
taste
Are we
is
sure
in my
he
mouth,
didn't have
he said,
like any sort of
which
native?
means he wants it
Like
very
anything.
badly.
He
He
he's
began
strong.
speaking around the country, including New York in
He and his
February
dad, that's what his
1860.
dad doesn't like him.
Here, as elsewhere, he shocked
Hmm.
his new audience with his appearance. The New York organizer said his heart went into his boots when he first saw Lincoln.
Was his hair
He
curly?
genuinely was an odd-looking person.
Wait, what?
He was very tall,
He was
very
very
thin. He
He
had
was.
huge hands.
He was.
He had very big ears.
He was.
He himself just said that he was an ugly man.
Oh, Lincoln.
When a rival once called him two-faced, Lincoln replied, "If I had another face, do you think I'd wear this one?" But when he began to
Oh.
speak, people saw him differently. In New York, his anti-slavery speech was so passionately received that the New York Tribune called him the greatest man since St. Paul. Lincoln authorized supporters to form a campaign committee, and unbeknown to Lincoln, they created a frontier image for him as a rail splitter. It didn't matter that Lincoln had hated farm labor. The idea of a humble, self-made man was good politics.
They wanted to make Lincoln as much this Western candidate as they possibly could. Rail splitting, activity everybody knew about in the West, and Lincoln had split a few rails. I bet there weren't too many calluses in Lincoln's hands in 1860.
At the Republican convention in Chicago, Lincoln was not the frontrunner, but many delegates believed he was the most electable because he was regarded as a comparative moderate on slavery. Lincoln trailed on the delegates' first two votes, but won on the third. Lincoln was now the pride of Springfield, but was still not a household name outside. He had to tell Republican officials to spell his name Abraham and not Abram. The election campaign itself would be a virtual referendum on slavery's expansion.
Most Northern voters had become convinced by 1860 that the slave power, as they called it, must be curbed. The 1860 election was really a contest over whether the future of the country ought to be one of free labor, democratic capitalism, or slave labor, plantation agriculture.
The campaign could not have gone better for Lincoln. His pro-South opponents split and fielded three candidates. Lincoln now looked a sure thing for election. His staff played it safe by keeping him out of the public eye for the whole campaign. Lincoln complained that he was badly bored, but it worked. In November, Lincoln took victory with just 39% of the vote, almost none of it from the slave states. The South was horrified, with one Georgian newspaper saying, "The South should arm at once."
They were afraid of what was going to happen down the road if the Republican Party took control of the federal government. Chipping away at slavery, for example, limiting Southern political power, cutting off any possibility of additional Southern-oriented states.
Lincoln tried to reassure the South that slavery would not be touched where it already existed, but to no effect. Just before Christmas 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union, and state after Southern state quickly followed. In January 1861, bullets replaced words. A Northern troop ship en route to Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor was fired on by South Carolina, which claimed the North no longer had rights to the fort. The outgoing president, James Buchanan, stood by helplessly, unsure what to do. The nation's eyes now turned to an untried leader in Springfield.
He's unknown in the sense that people aren't quite sure what kind of chief executive he's going to be, because he'd never held an executive post in his entire life.
Lincoln believed Southern tempers would cool down. But if they did not, he said, it was a president's duty to maintain the existing government. Secession was not even debatable.
Secession, Lincoln says, is the essence of anarchy. And this is a man who built his whole life on devotion to law, to order, to self-discipline. And secession, I think, strikes him personally as well as politically.
But until he took the oath in March, Lincoln had no power to act. One thing he could change, however, was his appearance. He began to grow a beard. The idea may have come from a letter he received just before the election from a little girl, Grace Liddell.
Dear sir,
I'm listening to the History Channel and I get really sad because I'm watching something about Abe Lincoln. And apparently, like, he was very ugly, and it made me sad. And I need to go hug my mom. Because that's sad. Because he wasn't even that ugly. He wasn't like ugly. He just had like strong features, and it made me really sad.
His face, though, would be improved.
It made me so
Would fill out
sad.
as he
Hey,
I think that he thought it would make you look more mature, more statesman-like, less ugly. In February 1861, Lincoln wrote the family trunks himself, labeled them A. Lincoln, the White House, Washington, and boarded a special train for the capital. Springfield residents came out to see him off.
I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return, with a task before me greater than that which rested upon Washington.
Lincoln, with no administrative experience of any kind, would have to govern a country that seemed determined to go to war with itself. Security was heavy as the Lincoln family made the 2-week journey from Illinois to Washington. The president-elect had already written his inaugural speech and gave it to his eldest son, Robert, for safekeeping. But Robert was more interested in learning how to drive the engine and lost the speech. A furious Lincoln had to burrow through the luggage to find it. In later life, Robert Lincoln would become president of the Pullman Train Car Company. During Lincoln's journey, news came that the southern states had formed their own nation, the Confederate States of America, with their president, Jefferson Davis, predicting war, long and bloody. By the time Lincoln reached Philadelphia, word surfaced of a plot to kill Lincoln as he passed through Baltimore. On the advice of
he wasn't
colleagues,
the
he donned
greatest
the
guy, but
disguise,
he seemed like a lot better guy now.
and
A lot of
was
these
smuggled
motherfuckers.
into Washington at night. It was an unpresidential entry into the Capitol.
It made him look cowardly. It made him look ridiculous, even though the evidence that there
I'm
was
watching stuff about Abraham Lincoln.
they're quite strong.
I should do a video about his wife. She was a
He
cutie.
must not,
She was
in
a
the future,
She was
appear
a cutie.
to fear assassination, to fear his enemies, and it did make him careless about protecting himself.
As Lincoln's inauguration approached, there was still slim hope for a compromise between North and South. Lincoln's inaugural speech included a
Lincoln was
plea
so
for
sad.
maintaining the Union.
We must not be enemies. The mystic chords of memory all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Abraham Lincoln, March 4th, 1861.
But the speech had no calming effect in the South. The Charleston Mercury called it the toxin of battle, from the orangutan in the White House. That same day, Lincoln received word from federal troops on Fort Sumter in Charleston that they could last only 6 more weeks without provisions. Lincoln would have to decide whether to send in Union ships and risk war, or to surrender Sumter to the Confederacy.
Oh.
It was a terribly difficult decision for him to make. Lincoln was a man of peace. He was not a warmonger. And yet he didn't want to give away the store.
He endured many sleepless nights, and as this crisis was building up, one morning he tried to get out of bed and fell over in a faint. So clearly he was suffering a great deal.
Finally, Lincoln decided to reinforce Sumter, but with provisions only, not troops. If there were to be war, he told colleagues, the South would have to fire the first shot. And that's what happened. On April the 12th, 1861, the South opened fire on Sumter, forcing its troops to surrender. The Civil War had begun. The news was greeted with euphoria by many Northerners who were anxious to teach the South a lesson. But Lincoln was not so optimistic. Man for man, he warned, the soldier from the South will be a match for the soldier from the North. Lincoln moved quickly, calling up troops, suspending habeas corpus to arrest Southern sympathizers, and ordering the blockade of Southern ports.
Lincoln's attitude was firm and remarkably consistent throughout the Civil War. He said that secession was simply a myth. It was unconstitutional. The Union was older than the Constitution, and the Union was indissoluble.
On the question of slavery, Lincoln had to be careful. He did tell Congress that this was a struggle to elevate the condition of men. But Lincoln was careful not to make the abolition of slavery an official aim of the war. 4 strategic border states, loyal to the Union, Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware, still had slavery, and Lincoln could not afford to offend them.
Lincoln once said as a joke, "I hope to have God on my side, but I have to have Kentucky." He felt that if the loyal slave states joined the Confederacy, the Northern cause would be lost.
Lincoln wanted to strike quickly against the South, while Northern optimism remained high. He suggested an attack on a vital rail junction in northern Virginia at Manassas near Bull Run. When Northern generals complained that their new soldiers were too green, Lincoln replied, "Yes, but they are green too." And so in July 1861, General Irvin McDowell reluctantly led a Union army against the rebels near Manassas, and the Northerners were crushed, retreating in panic to Washington. Lincoln's first foray as commander-in-chief had failed.
Totally unqualified to be commander-in-chief. He'd only been a captain in the Black Hawk War, never been in any kind of combat, was not a graduate of West Point, but Lincoln knew his shortcomings. He checked out books in the Library of Congress on military theory so that he could at least have a rudimentary knowledge, a working knowledge of what war was, how it should be fought, how it could be sustained, how it could be won.
Lincoln now sent for a promising general to take command of the Union forces, George B. McClellan, with the mannerisms of Napoleon and an ego to match. He did a superb job of training the Union Army, but after 6 months, he'd still launched no campaigns. McClellan resented prodding from the president, calling Lincoln an idiot and the original guerrilla. He even snubbed Lincoln in his face.
Oh, that was
Lincoln
just
visiting
Lincoln
McClellan
trying.
one evening, and McClellan coming in to the parlor, going upstairs, and going to bed, leaving the president sitting in the parlor, and Lincoln saying, "I will hold his horse if he gives us a victory." That patience, I think, is an important element in Lincoln's character.
Lincoln told aides he was not concerned with making points of personal dignity. His aim was to win the war, and McClellan, a respected strategist and engineer, seemed the best man for the job.
The secret to Lincoln's success as president, one of the secrets, was his remarkable ability to get along with difficult people. Even though they did things, and he knew about them, that most of us would have interpreted as insulting, demeaning, and we would have flown into a rage. Lincoln was the soul of forbearance, because he realized that it was his job as president to win the war.
Lincoln would need all his forbearance, because finding the right general to win the war would be agonizingly difficult. No sooner was Mary Lincoln in the White House than she began to redecorate it with imported furnishings. Within a few months, she'd overrun the congressional redecorating allowance that was supposed to last
always going to be tragic. But she wanted the world to know, perhaps misguidedly, perhaps in the wrong way, that the United States, as represented by the first family in a magnificent house, was a grand and a great country and a powerful country.
Lincoln, furious, said Mary's spending would
I'm
stink
not.
the land like over-freezing soldiers could not have blankets. He offered to pay the overrun, but Congress quietly took care of it. And while Mary's White House was extravagant, Abraham's was simplicity itself. He was so informal that he sometimes received guests in bare feet, and he liked to do things for himself.
One of the first things he would do would get up and go out and try to find a newsboy, buy a newspaper for himself. And it's hard for us to imagine in this day and age when you have hundreds of people working in the White House that his whole White House staff consisted of 2 young men in their 20s.
Lincoln worked long days and spent his evenings at the War Department, checking battle reports. Mary said she felt fortunate if he was home by 11. But Lincoln always made time for his sons, Willie and Tad, giving them free rein to play their own war games.
Set cannons up on top of the White House and bring these toy cannons into the cabinet room and shoot at the cabinet members, which may have had something about the fact that their father being taken away from them by war duties.
By early 1862, Lincoln must have wished that his son's enthusiasm would rub off on General McClellan, who'd still not launched the campaign. Lincoln wanted to hit the South on as many fronts as possible to make use of the North's superior troop strength. But McClellan, Lincoln complained, has the slows.
If General McClellan is not going to use the Army of the Potomac, I would like to borrow it. Abraham Lincoln, January 1862.
McClellan's inaction was highlighted by news from the Western Front, where a Union commander had driven the Confederates almost entirely out of Tennessee. His name was Ulysses S. Grant, and although Lincoln had never met him, he took an instant liking to him.
He said, Grant is a very meager telegrapher and stenographer. He doesn't write to me very much. McClellan used to send Lincoln these huge reports and arguments as to why he could not do things.
When Grant was widely criticized for his tactics in the bloody Union victory at Shiloh, Lincoln responded, "I can't spare him. He fights." When told that Grant drank too much, the president asked for the brand of whiskey so he could send it to his other generals. Grant's success gave Lincoln some optimism about the war, and Mary threw a huge, expensive party to show off the refurbished White House. But the Lincoln's euphoria was short-lived. Their son Willie came down with typhoid, probably from contaminated drinking water. For 2 weeks, Lincoln canceled most of his schedule to sit by Willie's bedside. Then, one morning, he walked into his office and told his secretary, "Well, my boy is gone. He is actually gone," and burst into tears. After the
Motherfucker, I was just not
Lincoln
reading
twice
your
went into
shit, you
Willie's
son of a
room
bitch.
and
I
looked
simply
across
wasn't
the
looking
gas
at
on his
it.
dead son.
But sure, use slurs and be a dickbag. Okay.
Would not wait.
Okay, shows your IQs
Grant was
in the
becoming bogged down
fucking
in the West,
negatives.
and
Truly,
to the east,
truly.
McClellan
Go
finally
seek some help
advanced towards
or
Richmond,
shove a knife up your
but was
penis. I
harshly
don't care.
driven back by Robert E. Lee's Confederates. Lincoln felt it was time for a drastic change of tactic. To hurt the South, he would act to free the slaves.
God forbid I don't give your misogynistic, fucking
The South
hateful
had
piece of
forbidden
shit
slaves who were
attention for
idolized
2
as
seconds. It's almost like I hate misogyny and I hate
Although Lincoln had always said a
people
president
hating
had
other
no
people.
constitutional right to
It's almost
have
like
slavery,
I'm a
the
good
war had
person
changed
and you're
all
a
that.
living piece of
As
human
commander-in-chief,
garbage that probably would have
he could
loved a
act out
man
of
named
military
Hitler.
necessity.
It doesn't
doesn't represent a change in his own morality.
So how about this? You go do what he did and supposedly commit suicide, and go suck his dick.
We can encourage slaves to leave the southern
I
lines
don't
of the
care for
armies,
you. I don't care
reduce their
about you.
capacity
Frankly,
for
I
and
hope
it also
you go suck his dick.
comported with his own wish to see all men everywhere free.
I do not care if you think I'm
In an office
being
of the War
dramatic
Department,
or I'm a
Lincoln
bitch.
asked for some paper,
You
saying he
are a
wanted to write
hateful
something
piece
special.
of humankind.
He then sat down and began writing the Emancipation Proclamation.
And also keep
He would look out
using
the
the
window
wrong
a while,
slurs.
then put down a line or two, and
You
then sit
idiotic
quiet for a few
piece of
minutes.
shit.
Major Thomas Eckert, War Department.
Lincoln wrote this way for several weeks, adding and revising each day, asking Major Eckert to keep it under lock and key. By late July, Lincoln was ready to show it to his cabinet. The proclamation said that in any state still in rebellion by the start of 1863, all slaves would be declared forever free. Lincoln was careful not to upset the slave-holding border states. The proclamation did not free slaves in Union-held areas, but it did encourage Southern slaves to flee the plantation.
Those who were Christians were certain that they were the chosen people, like the Israelites of old, and that they would be free just as the children of Israel were free. There was a Moses coming.
Lincoln's cabinet strongly supported the proclamation, but urged him to wait for another Union victory before making it public, so that it didn't sound like a tactic of desperation. As he awaited that victory, Lincoln thought of what to do with all the slaves that might flood into the North. He returned to his old solution of colonization and ordered an investigation of Panama as a possible colony site. Lincoln told black leaders that although slavery was the greatest wrong, the two races should live apart.
Our white men are cutting one another's throats, and but for your race among us, there could not be war. It is better for us both, therefore, to be separated. Abraham Lincoln, August 1862.
And he said, I don't want to argue the matter with you. Essentially, we cannot live as a biracial society, is essentially what he said. We suffer from your presence. African Americans were incredibly offended.
Maybe if you just let me
The tone of frankness and benevolence which he assumes in his speech is too thin a mask not to be seen. Frederick Douglass, abolitionist.
I don't even know why he was like yelling at me.
Colonization was one way for Lincoln
Like,
to make
dude.
emancipation more appealing to white Northerners. He wanted to convince them that
Like why
emancipation's
was he
main
even
purpose
yelling
was
at
to
me?
help
What?
win the
Because I
war,
simply
not
didn't read
to end
his
slavery.
hateful comment? Because I wasn't looking at it? Like I am clearly doing something. Yes, I am live, but I'm also clearly doing something.
All the slaves, I would do it. Abraham Lincoln, Outlet, August 1862.
He was as brilliant a public relations strategist as he was a political and military strategist. And he wanted that emancipation to be couched for the American people in terms of saving the Union. Because he knew that issuing it as a gesture toward eventual equality, or certainly toward abolition, was going to be very unpopular and could bring down the Northern government.
Finally came the battlefield victory Lincoln was waiting for. McClellan's army narrowly defeated Robert E. Lee in a bloody battle at Antietam in September 1862. 5 days later, Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation. Reaction in the North varied wildly, from jubilation among abolitionists and black leaders to race riots over fears that runaway slaves would take white jobs.
Oh, God
Within the
forbid.
army, some Union officers complained of Lincoln creating
I'm watching something about Lincoln,
And many Union soldiers
and it's talking a lot
deserted.
about slavery, and it's these people that keep throwing fucking fits because people are a different color.
There would be a great deal of opposition. But he was very brave about it. He showed what kind of leader he was. I don't think that there's another commander-in-chief in the history of warfare that changed the direction of a war, changed the principal mission of a war in the middle of a war.
Lincoln defended his proclamation as the one thing that would make people remember that he had lived.
By giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. Abraham Lincoln, December 1862.
After the Union victory at Antietam, Lincoln urged General McClellan to chase Robert E. Lee's army and crush it. But again, Little Mac refused to move, and Lincoln's patience finally snapped. He replaced McClellan, saying, "He's an admirable engineer, but he seems to have a special talent for a stationary engine." But changing commanders didn't help. General Ambrose Burnside led a suicidal Union charge up the hill at Fredericksburg in what became the worst defeat in U.S. Army history. Lincoln then replaced Burnside with Joseph Hooker, who led the Eastern Army to another disaster at Chancellorsville. Lincoln's staff said these defeats left him ghost-like and broken.
I don't think, though, that he ever considered giving up on the war, even when it appeared that victory was going to elude the North. Lincoln again believed that the American experiment in self-government was so valuable, that it offered such promise to the people of the world, that almost any sacrifice to keep it alive was justified.
Lincoln was forced to turn to a source of Union manpower he'd tried to avoid: black troops. He'd once doubted that black soldiers would fight, but now he called them a great force for restoring the Union.
The considerable pressure that was placed on him by abolitionists, they basically told Lincoln, look, you are fighting this war with one hand tied behind your back. If you allow blacks to become soldiers, they're going to make the best soldiers. They have the most to lose.
180,000 African Americans would eventually fight for the Union, and their bravery would help to change Lincoln's stand on black rights from political to personal.
You say you will not fight to free Negroes. Some of them seem willing to fight for you. In peace, there will be some black men who can remember that with silent tongue and well-poised bayonet, they helped mankind to this great consummation. Abraham Lincoln, September 1860.
With black men dying in uniform, Lincoln no longer mentioned colonization. Throughout 1863, the war began turning the North's way. At Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in 3 days of fighting that left 40,000 dead and wounded, Robert E. Lee was given his worst defeat so far. News of the Union victory reached Lincoln on July 4th, the same day that Ulysses S. Grant took the vital city of Vicksburg, Mississippi. Lincoln was impressed that the twin victories had come on the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, because he said the rebels were trying to overthrow the principle that all men were created equal. This, he said, is a glorious theme for a speech. And that speech would come a few months later at Gettysburg itself. A war cemetery was being dedicated there, and Lincoln was invited to make a few appropriate remarks. At the ceremony in November, the president listened for 2 hours as the designated orator, Edward Everett, recalled the Gettysburg battle. People were expecting another long speech when Lincoln rose, but he sat down again just 2 minutes later, before photographers could capture him speaking. He'd needed only 10 sentences to distill the essence of the Union cause and why the North must keep fighting.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met here on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. We cannot consecrate. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they have thus far so nobly carried on. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. And from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave here the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
As he sat down, Lincoln is alleged to have said, "That speech won't scour,"
Back.
an uncomplimentary farming term. But the other speaker, Edward Everett, told him, "I wish I had come as close to the central meaning of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." And the Chicago Tribune accurately predicted that the speech will live among the annals of man. Lincoln entered his re-election year, 1864, with his popularity running high in the North after some important Union victories. But he knew his chances were tied to the war. And when things started going wrong in the East, Lincoln brought in his favorite general from the West.
Grant knew that the way you won the war was to kill Confederate soldiers until they stopped. And Lincoln, by that time, had recognized that that was the only option. And Grant was the man who knew how to do that more efficiently, more effectively than anybody else.
Grant attacked Robert E. Lee across Virginia, and the cost was sickening. In just 2 weeks, Grant lost a third of his 100,000 men. Northern civilians were horrified. Even Mary Lincoln called Grant a butcher. Lincoln stood by his general, but the body count had its own effect on him.
Oh, it was a terrible burden. The pictures of Lincoln when he is running for the presidency, when he's 51 years old, make him look to be a young man. 4 years later, you look at photographs of him, and he looks like your great-grandmother.
Doesn't it strike you as queer that I, who couldn't cut the head off a chicken, should be cast into the middle of a great war, with blood flowing all around me? Abraham Lincoln, June 1864.
Lincoln came under intense pressure in the North to negotiate a peace, but he insisted there would be no ceasefire until the rebels agreed to rejoin the Union and abolish slavery. If he gave in on slavery now, Lincoln said, he would not escape the curse of heaven. But in the meantime, it looked as if he could not escape the curse of Northern voters. Even Republican officials were saying Lincoln's re-election was an impossibility, and the president agreed that he might be beaten, and beaten badly. Lincoln was not only facing defeat, but defeat by his old nemesis, George B. McClellan, now the likely Democratic nominee.
Lincoln felt, and many other people felt, that this would probably mean that the South would win its independence. If McClellan became president, there would probably be some kind of a truce or ceasefire.
No one was more fearful of a Lincoln defeat than his wife, now known by Lincoln's staff as Her Satanic Majesty. Mary had continued to spend wildly behind her husband's back, and to pay the bills, she accepted bribes to whisper in her husband's ear about who should receive government appointments.
She became, there's no other word for it, an influence peddler. She was the flip side of Honest Abe in this particular respect. She suddenly realized that she could do tremendous political damage to her husband if it ever got out, and there were threats that it was going to come out in the papers.
If he is reelected, I can keep him in ignorance of my affairs. But if he is defeated, the bills will be sent in and he will know all. Mary Lincoln, 1864.
Just in time for both Lincolns, the election tide turned their way. Union General William Sherman, marching south, took Atlanta. Once again, Northerners were filled with patriotism, and they rallied to Lincoln. He defeated McClellan in a landslide.
I am duly grateful to God for having directed my countrymen to a right conclusion, as I think, for their own good. Abraham Lincoln, November 1860.
Re-elected for a second term, and with Grant and Sherman pushing towards ultimate victory, Lincoln used his growing influence to end slavery for good. His Emancipation Proclamation applied only during wartime. Now Lincoln pressed Congress to pass a 13th Amendment to the Constitution, banning slavery forever. And he succeeded.
This is a king's cure for all the evil. Live or die, I give my heart and hand to this nation. Abraham Lincoln, February 1865.
To the Confederates, Lincoln offered peace at any moment if they rejoined the Union and accepted the end of slavery. He even offered to pay compensation to slave owners. But the South rejected the offer, and the fighting continued. The war was 4 years old when Lincoln rose to make his second inaugural address in March. And he'd been wondering why God had let it go on so long.
Before the war, Lincoln had spent very little time thinking about religion, but as the war went on, he tried to discover what God's purpose might be in this war. And I think that was part of his effort to come to grips with the enormous loss of life.
Lincoln decided the war might be God's punishment on all Americans for 200 years of slavery.
Fervently do we hope that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, God wills that it continue until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. So still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Abraham Lincoln, second inaugural address.
This is an amazing statement for a president to make, and not in some private conversation or private memo. He says this to the whole country in an inaugural address. It's a radical thing to say.
Lincoln was proud of his speech and anxious to hear the opinion of the black leader, Frederick Douglass.
There's a wonderful story of Douglass coming into the White House after the second inaugural, a huge crowd standing, shaking Lincoln's hand. And Lincoln calls out across the room,
there's my friend, Douglas. Douglas, come here. Douglas walked across this crowded room. Lincoln says to Douglas, what did you think of my inaugural address? There's no man's opinion that I admire more than yours. Douglas says, it was a sacred effort. And Lincoln says, thank you.
By early April, Grant's forces had taken the Confederate capital of Richmond, and Lincoln could not resist visiting there himself. Black citizens mobbed him and sang praises. White Southerners stayed indoors. Thank God I had lived to see this, Lincoln said as he viewed Richmond. Now the nightmare is over. As he left, he ordered the band to play Dixie, saying the tune was one of the best he'd ever heard and was now federal property. And it's good to show the rebels, he added, that with us in power, they'll still be free to hear it. Lincoln had visited Richmond despite warnings that there were constant threats to his life. Warnings he seldom heeded.
He would stroll across from the White House to the War Department telegraph office, often alone, at all hours of the day and night when he was president, without any protection at all.
Lincoln told his staff he must
Bye,
remain
everyone.
accessible to the people